Thank you, everyone. Welcome to the Public Works Committee meeting, May 24. Without objection, what I'd like to do, we have a guest here, and I would like to turn the meeting over maybe to Kevin Hajos. Perhaps you can introduce Ms. Collins and why she's here today.
That mic in front of you, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Before we do that, the chair will entertain a motion to approve minutes of the previous meeting. Mr. Bruno, Mr. Stroud, the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Now we'll, once again, if you could, without objection, we'll turn the meeting over to Mr. Hajos.
So we don't have any items under action agenda or new business. We do have items under our discussion items. The first one on there is the Zero Waste Warren County is going to do a presentation. I had sent out to all the board members. And I believe they all received a copy of the kind of a report that the Zero Waste did on our facilities, the transfer station facilities throughout the county. The report was a very good report. It showed a lot of the positive things that the towns are doing at their transfer stations. And without further ado, I will introduce Diane Collins, who with Zero Waste Warren County put this together, and she would like to go through the report.
Thank you. Mr. Conover and members of the committee, Mr. Kevin Hajos and Thomas Abel. Thank you for making the time for me to speak today. I'm Diane Collins, member of Zero Waste Warren County, made up of citizen volunteers concerned about a huge amount of waste generated by our lifestyles, much of which is recyclable. While private haulers handle most waste generated from residents and businesses, we were curious and focused on the municipal transfer stations and how waste and recyclables were collected there. At the outset, our goal was to work with you on transfer station revitalization, reducing solid waste, increasing collection of recyclables, and finding markets that would reduce the financial burdens on your towns. We visited 7 of the 12 transfer stations, and as the report shows, found varying systems. We appreciated the cooperation and information shared with us from each transfer station manager or attendant we met with. We tried to look at each transfer station we visited through the eyes of the residents who use them. We looked at what works well and what doesn't. We highlighted positive aspects at each unique location and made recommendations. We hope you've been able to read the report. We welcome your suggestions and hope you will consider our suggestions to reduce waste while improving the balance sheets of our transfer stations. We hope that one member of the Public Works Committee would consider participating with us on a transfer station committee, along with Mr. Hajos and Mr. Zabo, to develop and implement best practices across all the transfer stations. Supervisor would be part of the planning as a liaison with you all on understanding and setting the groundwork. Each town has its own concerns about the cost and value of making improvements, but there is a need to have consistency and cooperation across all transfer stations to find better markets at an economy of scale for better quality and higher quantity of recyclables. Right now, for example, old corrugated cardboard, designated as OCC, is selling on the market for $150 per ton. We pay close to that amount to Perkins for taking it off our hands, costing taxpayers thousands of dollars annually. To shift from cost to profit, cardboard would need to be collected clean and flattened in all the transfer stations. Other changes would need to be considered, such as having a baler, aggregating and safely storing the baled cardboard so it's ready for pickup by a paper mill. You would want a cost analysis, of course, but going forward seems promising. Plastics is another example. A potential local buyer I spoke with would pay only for number 2 plastic. Plastic has numbers on the back, 1 to 5, and they designate the amount of resin in each and the kind of plastic as a marketing guide. Now there is variation in plastic sorting among the different transfer stations. Some sort only number 1 and 2, some sort 1 and 3, some state only plastics with a mouth. Overall, the public is confused. They read in the media that less than 10% of plastic is recycled. It's actually 5 to 6%, only 5%. 6% of all plastic is recycled into a useful product. And so people toss it into the garbage where it winds up being buried for over 400 years. Plastic markets are opening up, however, and our Zero Waste Committee will be on the lookout. How plastics are collected would need to be standardized in all the transfer stations, and likewise public education. I would expect the public to support changes in transfer station collection design based on cost-saving use of new markets for their recyclables, and even increase bringing marketable recyclables to their transfer stations. Now we're in a crazy quandary. We want and promote more recycling, but it costs a lot to the towns to dispose of the recyclables. Times have changed. There are markets to buy recyclables now. Cooperation and consistency among the towns in the way recyclables, paper, cardboard, plastics are collected and aggregated will make a difference. As stewards of your towns, I know that saving money has your attention. Your current cost to dispose of recyclables is high. As a next step, we will report on the paper mills that we've been in touch with interested in buying our corrugated cardboard. Investing in equipment to meet their requirements will be very worthwhile. On June 21st, there was a webinar called Federal Funding for Recycling Infrastructure, at which Zero Waste will attend and report on. And I'll send you the link in case you might be interested in seeing what monies might be available for a baler, let's say, or help pay for a baler. Our Zero Waste group has built a solid, no pun intended, working relationship with Kevin and Thomas on reaching towards zero waste goals in composting, reuse, repair, and recycling. EEC just announced draft regulations to reduce waste. These will be new, to reduce waste sent to landfills, improve waste management, and reduce solid waste climate change impacts. It has to do with the large amounts going into landfills and methane production. I don't want to talk about climate. We're in a sorry state there. As citizen partners, we value working with Public Works, setting goals and finding solutions to increase recycling rates at our transfer stations and identifying fiscal solutions to the management of recyclables. Making changes promptly is necessitated. Thank you very much for your attention. I made little business cards of how you might contact us with questions.
Oh, very much. And I'm really happy to hear your comments about Kevin and Thomas and their participation with you in this process. As you know, we have hired someone who's devoted to this entire subject area, which many of us consider one of the most important issues of our time here in Public Works. One of the areas of I guess you could say relatively immediate attention is the development of new specifications for hauling at our transfer stations. And one of the things that perhaps we could do within we could make a number of changes within our existing specifications for work that I think could be helpful, not the least of which is somehow to index the changing market of recyclables. Whereas if the market for corrugated cardboard improves, then our revenue improves.
Thank you so much.
Or any other of our recyclable products, as opposed to some type of a flat fee for the hauling and disposal of recyclables. So I think that we're working that issue right now. It's an issue that perhaps we could look to other areas for guidance on But I think that if we have certain improving recyclable markets, we should be able to take advantage of that, Diane, and the way to do that is within our specifications for waste hauling, which could accommodate that in some fashion. The other is the other concern, immediate concern that I have, and I'm sure the other town supervisors have, is the cost of hauling the recyclables, which is much larger than the tipping fee, as you know. A lot of the rural towns, the cost of hauling the recyclables is very, very significant. So any ideas relative to how we could reduce the hauling costs? I think the report speaks to this in a number of different ways, not the least of which is the flattening and storage of the cardboards, getting more in the containers, that kind of thing. But with the rising fuel costs, I'm concerned that we're going to be looking at increased transportation costs relative to our transfer stations. And that's why anything we can do to improve on our tipping costs, the cost of tipping, up into and including even breaking even, becomes very important, because it helps to, while I can't just dispense with the hauling cost, which of course is much more, it can help offset some of the hauling costs that we face. But I think we have to, so I think what I'd recommend is that as soon as we have some kind of, even before we have a draft of the new specifications for work, Kevin, and perhaps we could have if you could sit down with some of the zero waste people, provide them the existing specifications for bid. Let's go through those specifications. Let's think about how we might be able to modify those specifications to get the benefit of changing markets, especially, improving markets. Cardboard was mentioned, but it's possible that our metals market could change, other markets could change. And if they do, it would be nice if those benefits could come through the bidding process to benefit the municipalities. Diane, if you'd like me.
Thank you. Well, the paper mills would pick it up. So our trucking would only be gathering it from the different transfer stations to an aggregated location. So I think that would be a big improvement to those costs.
Sure, I think that option is one that I think we should explore. Kevin, if you'd like to comment.
Yeah, just real quick. So if you hadn't get a chance to read the report yet, it's a very well-written report. And again, it highlights the positive feedback and the positive things that all the transfer stations are doing. One of the things that Diane and the committee had talked about in there is having a centralized transfer station that would have a baler, a building to house a baler, as well as a kind of a facility to house any of that cardboard, that old corrugated cardboard that could be picked up. As Diane said, currently you're paying to have that disposed of or taken to the recycle center. Not just the tipping fee itself, but you're also paying for the transportation to go along with that. One of the things that Diane and I talked about, and that's why I brought Julie here as well, is we still have one more year on the existing contract. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, so that would take us through
Number 20.
of 2023. Diane and I had spoke the other day and know that, there's a lot of kind of a cost analysis behind this that needs to be completed first to make sure that, we truly are going to, kind of, as you said, either break even or even go into the black. But I'm not sure, by this year, and I don't even think with the grant funding that Diana talked about, we would have the ability to have a central location with a baler in the building yet. So if we can come up with, and as Diane talked about it, that would be baled cardboard packaged up so that somebody who would come and take it to one of those paper mills and facilities, it's ready to go. They're not grabbing a bunch of loose cardboard and running with it, which currently that's what we have. So there's a little bit behind this. Diane and I had spoken, and I don't see this happening and putting this in place within the next year, probably within the next year, but I don't know necessarily that it'll take place this year. So one of the things that I brought Julie here was, I know going into budget season this year, all the towns want to be well aware of maybe where they're going to be with their tipping fees and hauling fees. I don't know, and Julie, maybe you can explain the categories of A, B, and C for fuel cost, and have we hit the next threshold or level? Which would in turn, if we have hit the next threshold, that would put transportation costs significantly more than what they are now.
I'll move over here just so you can hear me. They probably are into the next category already, and they're probably eating those costs. What we normally do is at the time that we request an extension, we give them the opportunity to increase their transportation into the next fuel category, which they provided pricing for 3 years, for each of the 3 years. So I have the pricing already. We know what that would be, but we don't usually do the extension. And we actually say in the specs that I believe it's in October, which is after the point that you guys have already done your budgets. I can give you the tab sheets again, so you know what those increases would be, just so you could budget based on that, if you want to exercise the extension. If you want to go a different direction and you want to rebid, then we would do it totally different
Talking about doing a rebid. before
for
we-
2023. Not extend into 2023 under the current pricing.
We would really need an analysis on that, because our existing bids for transportation are based on a fuel cost that is much higher today, much higher today. And as I was saying earlier, if you check your tipping fee as opposed to your transportation costs, this would be mostly for the rural towns, Queensbury, but as for the rural towns, our transportation fees are multiples of our tipping fee. So we would want to know, some analysis, maybe Thomas could help, or Julie or Kevin, we could get some analysis on that. But I think that the development of new specifications, I think, is going to take some time, because I think the kind of infrastructure that you're talking about, Kevin, that's going to take some time to put online. There's going to have to be a plan to do that. It's going to have to be a plan that we all sign on to, that we think is supported by the economics of what we're doing. We know it's supported by the environment. There's no question about that. And so, I mean, we know it's something we would certainly like to do. The question is what's going to be the net cost for the operation. So I think that I think there's a lot of work out in front of us, but I think it's good work. I think it's the kind of work that's going to get us to the best possible place relative to these changing markets. Dennis?
Ms. Collins, how often do you meet and where do you meet?
Meeting every 2 weeks, online, Zoom meeting. Monthly in the summer. Our next meeting is.
Thank you.
Dennis, you're volunteering to be our liaison? Okay, you have your volunteer.
No, I said I was considering it.
And, the supervisor from Lake George, he's leaving the room, so all those in favor of Dennis being on, Dennis is signed up, and if Dennis can't make it, Dan, I certainly will.
You say he volunteered?
Dennis Dickinson will be our liaison, but if he can't make it for any reason, I'll stand in for him. And once again, we really appreciate not only what you and the zero waste folks are doing, but how you're doing it. It's going to take us where we need to go, not only better but faster, in my opinion. And but in any event, we need to move into our agenda now. We certainly thank you once again for being here. So we'll move right into the agenda. What do we have first, Mr. Hajos?
So the second thing on our discussion items, Diane was first. The second thing on our discussion items was household hazardous waste, and I have Thomas here just to kind of give us an update. I believe I attached the flyer, but Thomas, if you want to speak to it. That's okay. Chairman.
Absolutely. Thomas, welcome.
Yeah, so this year, the Household Hazardous Waste Day, it's gonna be August 13th, 9 to 1 a.m. on Saturday. The state has rolled out, or I guess enrolled in a program. It's called Paint Care. It's in several states. Vermont is the closest other state to us that is also participating in it. And the state kind of puts a small tax on gallons of paint, and that pays for the free kind of cost-free recycling of paint, thinners, varnishes, kind of anything that's like a stain, anything of that sort. So we should see a savings on paints this year at our household hazardous waste event. I think oil-based paint in the past has been one of our bigger costs, so that should definitely can be, I think, a good thing for our household hazardous waste day.
Yeah, just if I could add to that. So in your package, there is, in case any of your constituents call, there is a web address that they can go register. And when they register, they can add in there what items they're bringing. As Thomas had said, we didn't in the past normally take latex paint, but this year we're able to take it now.
Fred. Supervisor Sagan.
Thank you, Mr. Phil. Let me come up here. You know, it's funny, thank you. Let's stay right there because there'll probably be some questions for you. I just happened to go buy a gallon of paint there just the other week, and I'm looking through and I see this 95 cents on the end of my receipt. So I called the lady over and I said, geez, I thought you got this paint stick and paint opener for free. Come to find out, it's a 95 cent. Is it a deposit?
I think it's more like a tax.
I agree with it. I think it's a good thing, but I was told that I could get that money back by returning the can, and I get a receipt from, and this is what I had to look into, you know, to do that. Not that I really go through too many paint cans, but I'm thinking that maybe a painter at 95 cents a can will, you know, that's a buck a can almost. I mean, but I was just amazed that I didn't hear this coming, and all of a sudden I see it on the receipt, and you know, it's just the cost of doing business. Also, why I'm here, and thank you, Diane, thank you very much. I have been following you for years, and you've really done a great thing. On the cardboard thing is, I grew up, my family was, my father was in the paper industry and learning a lot, and there's different types of cardboards, and you see them stack them in there, but by, you know, we get the binder or a baler, you know, you got to store it and keep it and everything else. My main concern is, you know, liability. Then you got to get a forklift to move these things once you bale them down. And Perkins picks it up for the same cost that we could get it for, but they do all the separating and dividing and everything else. So, you know, and it's just like the bottles. I mean, everybody throws in those bottles, but nobody wants, you know, the twos and the fives, but they want the ones and the fours, you know, I don't know. And now I guess the caps they don't want caps on them. It's confusing. So Diane, thank you for staying on this, but it's costly to recycle, and that's for sure. So thank you.
So you're willing to pay $48 for a gallon of paint, you won't pay an extra $1?
Oh, no, I paid it. I'm gonna go get it back. I'm going to get it back.
I don't, Mr. McGowan, I don't know a lot, but I can guarantee you're more likely to get a gold bar out of Fort Knox than 95 cents out of Kevin Hajo's, trust me.
I think you might be right there.
All right, next, Kevin.
Next item we have on there, of course, is the tipping fees and transport fees. So as Julie stated, we can extend through 2023. I'm not sure if we, and it's up to the towns, if we risk putting out another bid for that, and you're apt to come in with higher fuel costs, or leave it where it is. And in the meantime, over the next year, we will get that RFP together. We will look at grants that DEC has coming out. We will look at whether we would do a central location for a baler and facility, which I'm not sure where that would be yet. So there's a lot of things to go along with that. So I think I heard in the conversation, and anybody correct me if I'm wrong, that we'll continue with the extension for this year and look for next year to come up with a new and maybe better spec moving forward.
So we got,
Can I just clarify on that, Kevin, that it's likely that the transportation fees are gonna go up this year or for 2023. So you can still expect an increase. It just may not be as big of an increase if we put a new bid out now with the fuel market the way it is. And I've talked to Saratoga County and they've given me some ideas on maybe some indexes that we could use to kind of keep our fuel under control, whether it go up or whether it go down. So that might be something we want to do for the next bid.
don't
Well, that's a
count it.
very good point, because like we want to take advantage of improving recyclable markets, bidders are going to want to make sure that they're protected in terms of their transport bid, because now they've gone through a period of rising fuel costs, and a lot of them have had to eat on projects that they were involved in. So they're going to be, so we may find that we may be actually, we may have to think about bidding it both ways, actually, on the transport side, where the contractor gets to make an adjustment at a certain point in time.
I think it would be throughout the term of the bid. So if they would recover their costs if the fuel rose, but then we would benefit if it came back down and it's not at a set fee.
Almost how I would think well, I don't want to design the specs now, but it would almost have to be at least on a quarterly basis, I would think, something like that.
Adjustable rate.
Yeah, so it's not only an adjustable on the income side, but it may have to be adjustable to get bidders to bid it. It may be adjustable on the expense side as well.
Mhm.
We'll be looking forward to your input on all of this. Thank you. Mr. Dickinson.
So we got 7 months left in the year, you know, pull this off in 7 months. And ask you, ask him. He said no. He didn't hesitate.
The infrastructure required, the buildings and the equipment, the balers, no, I don't believe so.
You get a portable baler, is that?
I'll let Thomas speak to that. Thomas, I just had go up to North Elba. I believe they have 5, I think they refer to them as mini balers. Maybe you could talk about those balers, but I'm not sure that they're mobile balers.
They do make mobile balers. There's like a few different companies coming out that are trying to extract the value out of collecting the separated recyclables, but they don't quite work with our kind of scale. 1,000-pound baler, so it's on like an average size. But what I found at the North Elba transfer station was that it's kind of, the residents are kind of integrated into the system of where they put their materials directly into like one of 4 or 5 balers. And that's where kind of the logistical synergy comes out of it, where you then don't have to pay to have a person loading a bit.
Give me some idea of the cost of these balers.
I got a cost from a company in Syracuse. If you want an outdoor one that has to have like a weather tight control panel and an oil heater, it's about $18,000. But the balers that are at the North Elba station have been around for about 30 years. And I think they've only had to replace a ram once. They do all their maintenance in-house. With just a single ram, oils, gets relatively simple to work on. Maintenance at least.
How much were those? How much were the new one of those balers?
If you want one that can get you to like most markets, depending if we go with like a broker or find our own end markets, the transfer station manager up there suggested it's probably about $15,000 or so.
We have a.
The economics are there. We might even be able to talk to people in the private sector might be interested in performing that role also, which is an option we should also be aware of. So, all right, next item, I think we need to, given the hour, we need to move along.
Yeah, the last one on here is just, I wanted to make everybody aware that there's grant funding opportunities right now with DEC, with municipal funding for food scrap recycling. As you all know, Zero Waste is also looking at possibly creating a composting facility. But with that being said, we had a grant come through last year for the organics management plan, which we're waiting on DEC, but we will have a consultant come back to us and actually tell us what we can do. So before I pursue a lot of the other grants that would cover the cost of infrastructure and other items associated with composting, I'd like to have that organics management plan in place first to kind of lead us. The plan will lead us in the direction of where we should be going. So once we get a consultant on board, I will probably at draft stage, I will have them come in and kind of fill the supervisors in on where we should be heading with composting and organics.
And also, I think it's important that we also maintain a dialogue with our haulers, our private waste haulers, in terms of what they're going to be doing to achieve the state standards in other areas and what it would take to achieve those standards in our area. Come into compliance with state regulations. So I think that's an important dialogue to have with at least our two principal haulers, if not more, because correct me if I'm wrong, but in other areas that they're going to have to come into compliance with their green waste, correct?
There's some certain regulations in there. I think it's if you're more than 20 or 40 miles away from a compost facility, you don't have to compost your food scraps for large generators. So that definitely comes into play, those radiuses and the cost.
But some of these haulers also operate in areas where they have to be in compliance. So that dialogue with them about our area is very, very important, because as Zero Waste has correctly pointed out, if we can begin to remove the green waste from the stream, we can reduce to 40%, I believe it is, 35% of the weight of our waste stream. That's huge. We could, I mean, at 100%, if we could achieve that. So I think that dialogue is very important to have with the principals in the private sector. Oh, okay. We'll move on to the next agenda.
Public Works.
Public Works.
Thank you, Diane. So under Public Works, first item we have on there is a request to amend the grant. This is for the Bay Road, County Route 7 over Halfway Brook Bridge replacement. And this is to amend the grant to reflect the funding of their state DOT and FHWA.
The 1, 2, and 3 related.
They all are related. I can go through those quickly if you want. Next is the increase to capital project for that from the funding from the state, and the final would be to amend that contract with the consultant for construction inspection.
Without objection, the chair will then entertain a motion regarding items 1, 2, and 3. Mr. Bruno on the motion, second. Mr. Thomas on second. Thank you, Frank. Any discussion? There being none, are we ready for the question? All those in favor of items 1, 2, and 3 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item 4.
Next item in there is to increase capital project, and this is for funding for the right-of-way acquisitions associated with the Sagamore retaining wall. As you'll see in there, I believe in the packet, it'll show you that there's approximately, based on the just compensation, $27,200 with an appraisal to go to a property owner along where we're redoing the wall, and that'll be for an increase to the capital project of $30,000.
Chair will entertain a motion regarding item 4. Mr. Bruno on the motion, second, Mr.
Stroud.
Sorry, Mr. Stroud on the second. Thank you, John. Discussion? We're ready for the question. All those in favor of item 4 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Number 5 is associated with that as well, and that's approving the just compensation, which is the sheet in there for $27,000.
Mr. Thomas on the motion. Mr. Bruno on the second. Mr. Bruno on the second. Any discussion? All those in favor of item 5 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Item 6.
Next item on there is to increase capital project, and this is our kind of our bridge money project, county bridge and culvert projects, and it's for County Route 7 over at Glen Lake Outlet. This is the collapsed culvert that I have in Queensbury currently. This is not funding that I had within my budget for this year because it was a surprise to us when it happened. I know, and I've received many phone calls, and I think Supervisor Stroud talked to as well, as far as getting that project completed. We currently have our engineer doing the design of that project, and since I'm not budgeted for this money, I'm taking money out of my transfers to capital projects that we use on others to cover the cost of this for now. So I will need funding for this project eventually to replace the money that I have in that bridge and culvert project money. But right now I'm using that money to pay for the engineering costs. So
Item 6 forward.
That's the Bay Road.
Mr. Stroud, got it this time on the motion. Second, Mr. Bruno on the second. We're ready for the question. Mr. Stroud.
Yeah, this is one project that I have my emergency services people very concerned about, as well as residents very concerned about. I think if I've seen projects like this in the town, I've declared an emergency. I got the design and the implementation of the construction done very quickly by declaring an emergency. This is a major route that is now stopped dead, and cars are being directed to typically rural roads, trucks, everything. I'm getting complaints. You know, it started off as a month and now it's 2 or 3 months. Now, if we could declare an emergency and move this thing along, I think that would be the way to go.
and I'm not familiar, maybe I would pose this to the county administrator, county attorney. I'm not sure how we declare it as an emergency, and Supervisor Stroud, if the town has done that before, I guess I don't know what the premise is to do that. I think we would have a kind of a discussion to see if we could move it that route. I'm not sure how you declare it as an emergency. Doing that would assist me in, I don't want to necessarily say bypassing the permits and such that I will need. I also need to acquire right of way there as well. Would that expedite the process? I would still have to come through committee, get approval for right of way purchase. I would still have to have the committee approve, not necessarily approve the design, but the contracts with whomever was to construct it. Now, I do have a heavy highway bid, and I do have term agreements with consultants, and one of the consultants is working on the design right now. So I could conceivably, when they finish the design, ask one of my heavy highway construction companies to come in and build the facility, the infrastructure. Basically theirs is time and not necessarily materials, because we have commodity bids that we would allow them to use. So, but to declare an emergency, I don't know the premise behind declaring an emergency, and I'm not sure how that can be done.
I would appreciate you looking into that, Kevin. And I have declared emergencies on roads that are of, as you might say, a less serious nature, Dixon Road, for example. So if you would look into that, I think the residents and our emergency personnel would be very thankful if we could do everything we can to get this back in order.
Yeah, I mean, we received a letter
from the Bay Ridge Fire Department, stating the concerns they have about the length of time. And it's just not this culvert washout, it's also the Warrensburg Stony Creek Road one. I'm starting to get emails from constituents about the length of time, and these are emergencies when they've been shut down now since March maybe, and we're still in the design phase of fixing these projects. It's not getting I just think, in order to help DPW move it along, if there's an avenue or an arm that we can do to move these projects along, we really need to do that, because people are getting a little bit tired of it. And, 3 months to design a culvert may be legitimate, but, and then you've got to get the materials here, which, the design and getting materials, even from a local highway thing on something you're planning, is taking us a long time. But I really think we need to pull out the stops on a couple of these projects and see if we can't move them along. I know that people coming over from Stony Creek, or even the people living close to the washout over there at Thurman are tired of it. Alternative routes don't always work.
We'll talk, maybe talk to our emergency management office about this to see what avenues might exist. We certainly can chase that down. Have to do for more work. I think we.
Yeah, I'll just go very quickly. And, the 2 to 3 months for design, that's quick. It's very quick, because it's not just design. There's right-of-way acquisitions and there's permitting. The Stony Creek one, for example, was permitting through the APA. Bay Road is a little bit different. It's permitting through DEC and the Army Corps. We're progressing that. I can tell you right now for Stony Creek, I have the design is complete. We've spoken with the residences as far as just compensation. I have gotten approval from the board to pay those residences. Now I'm waiting on the APA. I had a meeting with the Adirondack Road Salt Task Force last week. One of the individuals on that task force committee is the planning director at the APA, and I have asked to see if there's a chance that they can push it along. But again, if we can do an emergency, then I'm more than happy to do that. But 2 to 3 months is fairly quick on these type of projects.
Sure. Mr. Stroud, your final word.
Well, Dixon Road was very similar. We went in, pushed our engineers for the design, pushed the attorneys to get the easements, pushed everything through, and got it done rather quickly. So if you get behind it, you can push these things through.
You're speaking to general municipal law.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I have that information with Kevin, and I'll talk about it.
Good. I mean, just as an aside, these are the last 2 meetings we've been talking about major projects, not only in public works, but major building projects, major cleanup projects, all these major projects. Supervisors need to understand that we're talking all of these projects. They add into the millions, many millions of dollars. And that's not talking to the projects that are part of our capital plan. These are projects that may or may not be part of the present capital plan that would be added to the capital plan. And we have supervisors talking about adjusting salaries also within the county. All of this is great. Generally would, I think, have the support of most supervisors, but it is going to take money to do this. And as you can see, Frank's the wheels turning as every time a project comes up and somebody says, not to mention with these 2 culverts, were unanticipated. What's the price tag estimate?
$3 to $3.5 million.
$3 to $3.5 million
Total
of
with both of them.
unanticipated costs. This is apart from everything else. So, keep this in mind that we can't be doing all of these great things without, without having resources. So.
Just keep in mind if Route 9 got a culvert washout, you'd be right there saying, let's get it.
Oh,
done.
absolutely. No. I don't mean it that way. I mean it in terms of, those that might affect our revenue picture for the county. Dennis?
We, at the town, have over recent weeks been losing some of our CDL drivers. Monday, not yesterday, Monday before we lost a CDL driver. Local guy, excellent employee, grew up in Lake George, and he got a $2 an hour raise and went to Northumberland. That set off our board. And we are now looking at being competitive. Because you lose somebody, first off, you're a man short. Second, I mean, it's just impossible to find somebody to work. And then when you do, you gotta train them. Well, geez, when you get all done, look at it, you go, we should have just given them $2 an hour more.
We're 11, is it 11? How many are you down?
I'm currently in DPW down 13 people.
13.
11 of those are in the highway alone.
It's discouraging. It's discouraging. You can't find anybody.
Does that include heavy equipment operators as well?
We had a meeting, or they had a meeting earlier regarding mass transit and the issues associated with getting CDLs for mass transit as well. So,
They're in big trouble.
all right, let's move on.
Well, that led us right into what Dennis was talking about. The next three items are positions.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, let's vote on increasing capital project. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Thank you, everyone. Item 7.
So item 7 is to notice of intent to fill the position of the Highway Construction Supervisor 1, which is our assistant foreman. And I just had one retire after 10 years of service with the county. And he's not going on to another job. He just retired.
Let's bring this forward.
I move 7, 8, 9.
You may move 7, 8, 9, Mr. Stroud. Absolutely. Motion to move. Mr. Dickinson on the second. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving 7, 8, 9 signify by saying aye. Opposed, carried. Thank you, everyone.
The last item we have on there is to amend budget, and this is due to an insurance recovery.
Okay. Mr. Dickinson on the motion, Mr. Merlino on the second. All those in favor of amending the budget signify by saying aye. Opposed, carried. Thank you.
I'm not gonna, I want to move the meeting along. I'm just gonna hand out pictures real quick, which is our construction projects that are current underway or have been completed. The first one would be County Route 26 Palisades Road. The next set of photos will be County Route 11 Riverbank that was just completed. The next one is County Route 46 Antica Drive, which is in the town of Chester. And the last one is County Route 43rd Church Street in the town of Chester. The next item I have on the menu is there was a request to look at the Cary Road Industrial Park, which is off of Corinth Road, County Route 28. When that was initially planned, I think there was 6 or 7, 8 lots that were proposed, or 8 subdivided lots that could be proposed for industrial commercial use. We've seen a significant amount of traffic there. The Hudson Headwaters just opened up I believe a new medical facility there as well. So with that being said, I reached out to Aaron Frankenfeld to let's do a kind of a traffic study within that area, because there was a gentleman who crossed that area 3 years ago now during a winter, or 2 years ago during a winter month, and was killed trying to cross at the bus stop in that area. So we had asked Aaron had reached out to their term agreement engineers. Mark Nodolny is here now to present. And he's going to kind of go through what they determined, what recommendations they may have within that area. As you all know, Corinth Road was reconstructed back in 2010 based on traffic and not many facilities within that Cary Road Industrial Park. It was suitable, but Mark, I'll let you get into it and kind of talk about the process, or unless Aaron wants to talk first.
Good afternoon. As Kevin said, my name is Mark Nadolny. I'm an associate with Creighton Manning Engineering, and we worked with HFTC and the county to conduct the assessment. Do we have this available in my presentation?
I thought I had passed it down. Mark, if you want to just get started talking, I will have it. I'll make sure I get it up for you.
So, yeah, we don't really need the slides.
Yes, I do.
So in terms of the agenda, I'm going to provide this technical presentation and go over the study area, the project process. We went through some existing conditions information, some forecasting, evaluations, and recommendations. I'll take some questions at the end. But the study area is essentially Cary Road West and East and Big Bay Road signalized intersection to the east of the industrial park. Now, the purpose of the study was to evaluate existing and future transportation needs in the study area and to identify any potential improvements in order to maintain safe and efficient access throughout the corridor. That was sort of our project goal. Now, we did have an advisory committee. We had AGFTC on the committee, the town of Queensbury, representatives from Warren County, DPW, and also the Glens Falls Fire Company. And so what we essentially did was we went out and did an assessment of existing conditions. So essentially we took a look at Corinth Road. Corinth Road experiences approximately 9,500 vehicles a day. It's got typical commuter peaks, and the speed limits transition from about 35 to 45 miles an hour as you travel out to the west. We also looked at Cary Road. Now, Cary Road has approximately 1,500 vehicles a day, also has similar commuter peaks, and no sidewalks, posted speed limit of 30 miles an hour. So we installed traffic counters in order to understand speeds out there, volumes, and we also did turning movement counts at specific intersections. And those intersections would be at the signalized Big Bay Road intersection with Corinth Road, and at Cary Road East and Cary Road West, those two unsignalized intersections. So we counted those during the morning peaks and the afternoon peaks, and that captured not only peak commuter traffic, it also captured school traffic as well. Other things in terms of existing conditions, we looked at operations and how much delay motorists typically experience on Corinth Road and at those specific intersections. We reviewed existing transit operations in the area, pedestrian and bicycle operations. We also requested crash information from the state and evaluated that crash information. Essentially, Corinth Road has a crash rate that's slightly below statewide averages. However, the Big Bay Road intersection and the Cary Road East intersection has accident rates that are a little higher than statewide average. We also reviewed lighting in the area. Yeah. Kevin, are you able to?
Yeah, it's coming through.
Okay. I got it on a jump drive if you want that, if that'd be easier.
Okay. You don't have anything else on it. You don't want to.
Yeah, like lunch.
Yeah, lunch.
It's in a folder called Cary Road. It's the only.
We should. And step out for a second. Can you just take over the meeting for a moment?
So I guess I'll just keep going. Now, in terms of, once we had existing conditions assessment, we wanted to see what was going to happen out there in the future. So we reviewed what was currently in the Cary Road Industrial Park site. There are 12 parcels that have land use on there, and they currently generate about 250 AM and PM peak hour trips. That's kind of entering and exiting during those peaks. That's that. There's about 375,000 square feet of development within the park right now. Am I able to control this, or no? Can you go slide through the slides here? go through probably about 10 or 15 of them. Keep going. Keep going. So here's the existing park. That's what I was just talking about, 250 trips AM and PM. And so what we wanted to do is essentially look at two conditions. What would happen if the park completely built out, which is the next slide. Next slide. And that's full build out of the park. Now, there's about 10 additional parcels, one more click please, that you'll see. Those 10 additional parcels we would anticipate could have an additional 615,000 square feet of development, which would equate to maybe 200 to 275 AM and PM peak hour trips if they continue to generate similar to how the existing industrial uses are generating within the park. So that was our first sort of threshold. What happens if just the industrial park builds out? The second threshold we looked at, which is the next slide, is full build out of the project area. Now we met with the town of Queensbury. One more click, please. And they identified about 17 other parcels they could potentially build out that either have approved projects or have some speculative development. There's some vacant land out there that they believe is ripe for a redevelopment. And based on our assessment, those parcels could generate another 600 to 800 AM and PM peak hour trips. So then what we essentially did was assign all that traffic to the roadway network to see how these intersections will operate in the future under existing conditions and what sort of improvements would be needed in order to maintain adequate operations. One more click, please. So what do we do in the assessment? We looked at levels of service. We wanted to make sure that how are the intersections operating, levels of service. Each of these intersections are essentially graded by a letter grade like you get in school, A through F. And we want to make sure that these intersections are not failing in the future. We also looked at available pedestrian connections. We looked at left turn lane warrants at intersections that do not have left turn lanes. We did the crash review. We also looked at signal warrants at each of the unsignalized intersections into the Cary Road Industrial Park. So this is the study area. One more click. And we're going to focus on the sort of west side of the study area around the industrial park. Another click, please. So focus on Cary Road West. Keep going. And one more click. And so right now, we would recommend that a westbound turn lane be considered at the Cary Road West intersection. Now, it's not necessarily need, it's not a shall, you absolutely have to put in a left turn lane there at full build out of the industrial park. However, if you see accidents start to increase as it builds out, it depends on how the industrial park builds out. Are the parcels on the southwest quadrant of the industrial park, are they going to generate more traffic than the southeast? You could start to experience higher rear end crashes for people waiting to make the left turn in. So this is more of a monitor the intersection and make sure that a westbound left turn lane is needed or not. So next click, please. So then in terms of the overall corridor, as we start to travel to the east, one more click. What we could do is consider a two-way left turn lane between each of the signalized intersections. Now, the reason for that is, in a second, I'll let you know that there is a westbound left turn lane that would be required, that should be constructed at the Cary Road East intersection. Now, when you do that, you need to start tapering the left turn lanes into each other. And when you start to taper them, you're going to have this hourglass effect on Corinth Road. Now, rather than have an hourglass effect on Corinth Road, you can consider constructing a two-way left turn lane between the intersections, which would benefit Minnesota Avenue and some of the residential intersections on the north side of the road. No, one more click, please. That's here. Another click, please. The other improvement we recommend would be a potential mid-block crossing at the existing transit stop. This is the location that Kevin had noted that there was a pedestrian fatality, and there's not great lighting out there. There's no pedestrian accommodation on either side of the road. It's really, it's part of a transit loop for the public in order to get to many of the medical offices on the south side of the road. However, you could provide a mid-block crossing with appropriate signage. However, there is also the potential for the installation of a traffic signal at the Cary Road East intersection. So there's also the potential to relocate that transit stop to the traffic signal so they would have access to a crosswalk and use that signal in order to cross the road. Another click, please. Another potential pedestrian connection could be provided on the south side of Corinth Road in order to get from the transit stop to the new the Adirondack Radiology Center on the southeast quadrant of the intersection. So there is no real way to walk there unless you're walking through the parking lot. So again, we could investigate whether or not there is a pedestrian connection that could be provided. Next click, please. And this is the Cary Road East intersection. Next slide. And the improvements here, next slide, is the construction of a westbound left turn lane that is really warranted now. You've got a fairly significant volume of left turners making the left turn onto Cary Road East, and then the monitoring for a traffic signal at this location. Now there's, due to the sort of the destination where everyone's leaving the park, there's a lot of right turns coming off of Cary Road East. So the traffic signal is not as necessary for those right turns, but as the park does build out, we would recommend that the intersection be monitored for the installation of a traffic signal because it will meet the warrants in the future. Next click, please. And as you continue going to the east, next click, would be extending the sidewalk. Another recommendation would be to extend the sidewalk from Indiana Avenue all the way to either the traffic, a potential future traffic signal, or all the way to the transit stop in order to provide that pedestrian connection for anyone getting on and off the bus. So you do have that commercial area to the east, closer to the interchange, and that would provide that consistent pedestrian connection from the bus stop. Next clip, please. Another one. Again, there is a potential to consider a sidewalk on the south side of the road as well. I mean, if you provide one on the north side, it's not as necessary, but there is that potential. If you do widen the road, you can wrap that into a larger improvement project. Next slide. So now we're going to focus on the eastern edge of the project area. Keep going. One more. And so here, advance the slide, please. Again, we could consider a two-way left turn lane on Corinth Road between Big Bay and Cary Road East. Again, this is not a necessity, but if you start to construct a westbound left turn lane at Cary Road East and also an eastbound left turn lane at Big Bay, again, you're going to start transitioning your tapers through this area. And would it make sense to incorporate a larger improvement project that would have a two-way left turn lane that would provide access into your residential streets on the north side of the road, like Ohio Avenue, Rhode Island Ave, and you've got some residential uses on the north side. They could then use that to make a two-stage left turn to get out, or to make the left turn in, and they wouldn't be impacting through traffic on Corinth Road. Next click, please. Also, a pedestrian connection between the Sky Road or the Sky Zone and Stewart's on the south side of the road. I believe I talked to the planner at the town of Queensbury, and she said this has already been being discussed because there is quite a bit of traffic, foot traffic between these two uses. Keep going, please. One more. And also, another thing that should be considered is modifying access into the Stewart's, which would be restricting the northbound left turns from the driveway. The crash pattern does indicate that there's quite a few right angle accidents right at the Stewart's driveway. Due to the queuing associated with the adjacent traffic signal, there's limited sight distance, and there's definitely a sort of a pattern of crashes at that Stewart's driveway. It's not to say that you wouldn't be able to make a left turn out of Stewart's. You could still use the intersection on Big Bay Road and to actually use the traffic signal in order to make a left turn. So you wouldn't eliminate that movement out of Stewart's, but you would eliminate it from that driveway itself. So that should be considered just based on the accident history there. Keep going, please. One more. So now these are the improvements that we recommended at the Big Bay Road intersection. Keep going, please. One more. So here, there would be a phased improvement project. The first thing would be constructing a short eastbound left turn lane opposite the existing westbound left turn lane. There's an existing bull nose opposite the westbound left turn lane. Then again, as development starts to increase in the project area, we'd recommend widening the southern leg of the intersection to provide an exclusive left turn lane and a shared through right. You then need to modify the geometry on the northern side of the intersection. And also providing pedestrian accommodations on all 4 legs of the intersection. Right now, there's only a crosswalk provided on 2 of the legs, and one of them does not have pedestrian push buttons. So we would recommend providing full ped accommodations on all 4 sides. Next, and one more. And then also there could be consideration of extending the sidewalk all the way on the south side to the interchange along Prince Road. So one more click here. One more. So in terms of cost, now we provided a cost summary in the report that was $7.5 million. However, that's an inflated number. That would be as if you constructed each improvement on its own without ever having one general big project where you can kind of combine them all together. For example, if you were going to construct a westbound left turn lane at one or both of the Cary Road east and west intersections, you would likely do the 2-way left turn lane in between and have a significant savings because you wouldn't be going out there and ripping up pavement more than once. So we provided the table for each individual improvement if they were done on their own. But if you were able to sort of phase this into larger projects, that cost would come down to closer to $3.5 million. Again, if you could sort of logically sort of lump the improvements together. Next slide, please. This is the table that's in the report. Again, we've got a sort of a phase 1 and 2 in intersection improvement associated with each of the locations identified in the report. And you can see it on each of these improvements here, but you can see these 2-way left turn lanes down in the corridor improvements are about $1 million to $1.5 million. But again, if that was tied into one of the eastbound or the westbound left turn lane improvements, that would come down significantly. Next. So in terms of costs and funding options, there are several different ways that county and the town could go after money. They could go through the federal route. There's HSIP money for Highway Safety Improvement Program. There's the NHPP, which is the National Highway Performance Program. There's the TAP program, the Connection program, which is an AAG FTC administrative program. And also the state has the CHIPS program that is available that, in order to get funding for these types of projects. Next slide. So all this has been documented in a draft report. It's been circulated to the committee, and we are progressing through and addressing comments at this time. And so, we'll take any comments that everyone here has today and address them in the report as well. But that is essentially a summary of the improvement projects that we have for the Cary Road Industrial Park.
Goes without saying that I've been overwhelmed. It's a lot. Does anybody have any questions before I start grilling them? John, go ahead.
Yeah, well, Mark, when we energized the zoning around exit 18, I believe it was Chasen at the time, we had do a intersection and traffic study for Big Bay Road as well as Big Boom Road.
Right.
But yours is focusing. How did your conclusions match up with Chasen? Because it looks very similar to the eventual build out that we might do.
Right. It is very similar. So I don't think the Chasen study went as far as Cary Road. Yes. So the eastbound left turn lane is sort of a no-brainer. As the fast track builds, you've got the Holiday Inn to the north there. You also have another piece of property to the north that is vacant. And that eastbound is sort of a no-brainer. And then you start to look at what types of northbound and southbound improvements you can do, because east-west, you're really now limited in right away, east-west, to provide any additional auxiliary turn lane. So I'm sure that, I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm sure the improvements are very similar.
Anybody else have any questions? I got a couple questions for you. The crosswalk where they had the fatal accident, how busy is that crosswalk?
In terms of pedestrians?
Yeah.
We did not get boarding and lighting information from the transit provider, so I do not know the numbers. And so we would have to install a camera in order to watch it. But
Yeah.
if the transit provider had boarding and lighting, we could get that from them.
So if we put in sidewalks, it's going to increase that pedestrian traffic.
Yes, well,
And secondly, if we put in multiple lanes, I'll tell you, our entryway into Lake George has a single crosswalk, not where it's busy, but down by the state facility with a light on it. I have on many occasions attempted to cross the road at Stewart's. So there's 2 lanes one way and 2 lanes the other way, and a free-for-all lane in the middle. And that's an exciting experience.
right.
People all over the place, they don't use their signal lights, you don't know where they're going, you think you're going to be safe, and all of a sudden they're coming at you in both directions. So to me, it's pretty crucial to make sure the crosswalks are safe.
Right, so there are different things you can do with the crosswalk. You could provide the RRFBs with the flashing beacons on them to really highlight the fact that there is a crossing, you have appropriate signage. But again, the other recommendation would be if a traffic signal is installed, you relocate the transit stop to the signal so they'd have a button to stop traffic. So they're not making the decision on their own, they're using the traffic equipment to make that cross.
The crossing we have in Lake George is pedestrian controlled. And it works very well in the off season. It's hardly ever red. And during the season, it is red a lot, and it should be. So we're looking at 3 or 4 million if we do the whole project.
Right, so you could, but again, you could pick pieces in and out. So if you don't feel that a sidewalk is necessary on both sides of the street, maybe you focus on the north side because you already have a pretty long connection, and then you just finish the connection to Cary Road East and put some lighting, because right now your lighting sort of stops around Indiana Avenue. So maybe you carry some lighting out to Cary Road East, and you don't do a pedestrian connection all the way on the south side. So there are things that you can pick and choose. Again, westbound left turn lane at Cary Road West, it's probably not necessary now, and maybe you wait on that until the future, until maybe you do see some rear end accidents as the industrial park does start to fill out. But maybe that's not a part of your phase 1 improvement plan. I would say your phase 1 improvement plan would be focusing on Cary Road East, the westbound left turn lane at Cary Road East, continue to monitor that intersection for a traffic signal, and you go from there. And then maybe focusing on some of your pedestrian connections to make sure you at least have a pedestrian path from the transit stop to your commercial area, so you're not asking pedestrians to walk on the shoulder.
So, John?
I try and tell my planning board members, the time to put a sidewalk in is when the lot's under development. Of course, the developer always argues, no, extra cost. But it's very difficult to put a sidewalk in after the fact. The time to put it in is at the time the developer's developing the lot.
And I think I've heard, from what I understand, the lot on the north side, is that you?
Yeah.
I've heard that they're considering, clearing out some of that land, and that may be a recommendation that the planning board has, is that, well, then you at least provide the right of way for the sidewalk, if not putting in the sidewalk at that time.
Good point, John.
Yeah.
Kevin?
I was just gonna ask Mark, and I think I know the answer anyways, is the cost that you provided, that's strictly construction cost,
That was everything, actually. That is,
right away? Or are you saying that it all fits within the right of way, especially with the 2-way left turn lane and or sidewalks?
I think we were also anticipating that the widening would be done on the south side of the road, which would be within the industrial park. So you could get away with without a whole lot of right of way if you're dealing with the industrial park. I'd have to look at I didn't do the construction cost estimate, so I don't know if the right of way is included, but it included the construction soft costs such as design and all that sort of stuff, and inspection. And I think we even put in a 20% contingency fee, just because, inflation costs, everything goes up. So it's 20 to 30%. I don't know if we probably didn't have a detailed right of way acquisition line in there.
Brad?
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. So what you're saying, as it is right now, it doesn't warrant a light. It warrants turning lanes and a little width of expansion.
Yes.
All right, because one of the things I see on Corinth Road is it is straight. And anybody who gets on a straight road, well, the majority of people, just does Mark 90. And that Cary Road being on the planning board is really set for years and now it's taking off. And Hudson Headwaters is really I think one of the biggest ones over there. And that's a lot of traffic because it's health and that, a lot of in and out. So,
Yeah, you see that in the traffic counts, how consistent it is over the course of the day. It's not just everyone in and then no traffic. It's everyone in and then consistently over the course of the day because of the medical office use, definitely. I mean, it's going to look similar to what you've got on the east side of the interchange. You're sort of now building out on the west side and you're incrementally, you already have your sort of commercial McDonald's and Taco Bell right next to the interchange, and that's naturally going to expand out to the west. And so the look and feel of Corinth Road will be similar to the east side if you want to maintain adequate traffic operations. You have to start to provide auxiliary turn lanes at some of the intersections.
well, and that was really the whole purpose of Cary Park, putting it out there and really bringing it down. The other one I have a really major concern on is that is a little tight one there at Big Bay Road. Is it Big Bay or Big Boom? I always get them. Big Bay, Big Boom. But there's a major telephone pole that is there. And I believe when they were doing the fast track and that's the hardest thing, get Verizon to do anything.
Right.
And if you're gonna go that way, I'm pretty much gonna say we're gonna have some problems.
Well, yes, the utility costs were included in the estimate.
Did you talk to Verizon?
Well, we've done enough where we know what utility.
Because let me tell you, that pole, they got it over as far as they could, and it's on the edge of the road, and I'm waiting for that plow to take it out,
So yes, the utility costs are included, and that is why, if you look, almost all the utilities are on the south side of the road. So you're talking about moving all those utilities because we know that there's not a whole lot of right of way on the north side because of all the residential. So you've got more room on the south side. When I say room, you've got the industrial park is on the south side, but you have all those utilities that you're going to go relocating. That's what it starts to bring the price up, obviously.
Mark, Brad's point's well taken. I go to Hudson Headwaters a lot more than I'd like to. And when we come out, we go right, which you would think is a no-brainer. It is not. When you come out there, if there's a car coming, you have to wait long enough to determine how fast he's going before you pull out. They fly down through there.
They do.
Yeah, the speed limit is 45 and the 85th percentile speed is a little over 50, which is, pretty typically everyone's, the 85th percentile is almost always 5 miles over the limit. And that's what people are generally doing along.
It'd be nice if you could stop them once in a while so we could get out.
But yes, and the traffic signal would do that. So the signal is close to being warranted right now. And as you put more and more development in there, depending obviously what it is, it'll still trigger those warrants. There's 3 volume warrants and it's close to meeting all 3.
It's growing quickly out there. Kevin?
Just the last thing I want to add, and this may be for a future discussion, is all towns have developments, and all towns typically would request of their developers to do traffic studies and such. And if they determine that, whether it's something in the future or not, maybe at a town level, we start requesting of developers to pay for some of these costs as well. Sidewalks, expansions, turn lanes, things like that. I know there's funding available, but that may be another piece of the pie that we could kind of grab later on.
The tough part with that is, and I 100% agree with you, if you've got a developer that his piece of his corner is the southeast corner of Big Bay and Corinth, you can tell them, yeah, you need to put in a sidewalk there. But how do you tell, a developer, well, we're also trying to collect money for a sidewalk on the north side of Corinth Road, and they're not even on the north side of Corinth Road. Well, that's when you get into like a GEIS fee where you try to collect, a fee per trip that they're going to generate because they're adding to the overall. So maybe they don't themselves trigger a traffic signal, but you don't want 1,000 cuts, to all of a sudden you need a traffic signal and the last man in has got to pay for it. And the last man in could be a self-storage unit, but all of a sudden he generates 10 trips and he's putting in a traffic signal. It's really not necessarily his fault, but is he the last man in?
Just quick, but they have done that, Mark. They've gone through that GEIS, the GIS process and done that.
Yes.
We looked at that locally on the exit 17 corridor of the town of Monroe. They're experiencing tremendous growth pressures down there and have a lot of concerns about capacity and being able to get back and forth with the Northway. So the last planning study that we had done, which actually Craig Manning had performed on our request, was there was a GEIS component of that, which is basically shared costs for anticipated transportation mitigations that result.
Kevin, do we have copies of this presentation?
I do, and I will pass it out to everybody. I will send it out to everybody in an email.
Aaron?
Yeah, just as a matter of procedure, this was commissioned by AGFTC on behalf of Warren County because it's our report. And NPOs exist for the sole purpose of public transparency and federally funded decision-making. This report will need to go out for public review before we can call it done. So my intention would be to release it for a 14-day public comment period, during which I welcome any comments that any committee members have back here. We'll look to incorporate those back in, and
Great.
following the close of the public comment period, we'll get with Kevin and make sure that the finished product is what was expected.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Anybody else got anything?
Good info.
So where are we going from here? Just what Aaron said?
That's what Aaron said.
Okay. So if we get a copy of this, we can review it and
Yeah, and Aaron, I can send it out to them right now, correct? Like to the board.
Yeah, I'm talking with Mark, the report's ready to go.
I've got a couple minor changes I made, so let me send you one this afternoon and then send that one out.
Perfect. Thank you, Mark.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Aaron.
everyone.
thank you, Aaron. Good job.
Yes, good job.
We'll disappear when we need the money.
Most of you folks know where to find me. May not have anything for you, but you know where to find.
All right.
What are we doing here?
We're going on to, I think we're moving on to Parks and Rec.
No God. Okay, Parks and Recs. Fish stocking.
So in the report, you'll see that I added in fish stocking. We are complete with fish stocking throughout the county. At the very bottom of the second column, you'll see that Schooner River surplus, and they were looking, DEC had a program that if we had any surplus, they would look to stock them in other areas. So we did have surplus. As of today, that surplus of fish stocking, or those fish are in. I will come back with numbers as of next month. But as of right now, our fish stocking is completed for this year.
I've got one. So do you have fish left over? Should I stop over and?
If you don't have any fish left over.
Yeah, there you go.
I assume we've done this concept plan in Bay Road? Is that something else?
It's inside the package. So next item on information for discussion and review, I was asked to put this on my agenda for this month. And if Chairman doesn't mind, I would like to turn it over to Supervisor Stroud to kind of go through his concept plan.
All right, well, talking
Yes, please do.
talking as a bicycle and pro bicycle, and as you know, I've developed bicycle trails in the town of Cary. And there's, as you're all familiar with the site, so I don't need to repeat the background of it, but it certainly hasn't attracted anything in the way of substantial use other than what I proposed, which, you know, has gained a lot of popular support with the residents and so forth. Now, I'm not asking you to approve it, because I think you would be more convinced of what you're seeing conceptually if you knew there was grant money to fund it. So I have talked to AGFTC, I have talked to the county's planning department, and I've talked to my senior planner, and all of them say, this is the perfect kind of project for grant funding. Okay. They can't go out, the Warren County Planning Department cannot go out and seek grant money unless you approve them to seek grant money. So I wanted you to look at the concept that was done by Chazen. I offered to pay for it, and they offered in counter to do it as a community service, which is now Labella. That's how strongly I feel about this project as being a good project. It is, a park and parking facility that could have a butterfly garden, for example. Cornell Cooperative Extension would probably jump right on an opportunity to be able to get involved with that kind of thing. All right, these are the kind of things we can look at. It is more, the people are parking there now and using the bike trail. That's how open and apparent that this area would be as a good park and parking facility for the bike trail. And it's an amenity to the bike trail that would be very popular and very grant fundable. So I'm not asking this committee today to say, oh, I like the idea, let's just go ahead and approve it. I'm asking the committee today that if you agree that this has some semblance of the right thing to do, which I believe it does, would you approve going out and getting grant money? Now, if we get grant money, that could or could not change your mind. I think that if we got enough grant money to be able to develop this without cost to the county's budget directly, I think you'd look at it even more favorably. So I'm asking the committee today if you would support allowing the county's planning department to seek out grant funding for this. If they find grant funding, they would come back to us and you would get another chance to take a look and analyze the project in terms of its value. Knowing how much of it might be funded. So that's all I'm here is to ask you today for your support to seek grant funding.
Before I open that up, I'm going to say that our project, John, has received a tremendous amount of money. Received money for development. We're ready to go out for construction. We've also gotten a tremendous amount of support from the bicycle organizations. It's just a hot topic.
Where is that?
On Bloody Pond Road. It's fronts Bloody Pond Road in Lake George. And it's 300 acres, 150s in town of Lake George, 150s in Queensbury. So we've gotten together and done a joint project. It's
Bloody Pond Road, how far down from?
It's about halfway down. It's a wooded, only wooded strip on Bloody Pond Road. There's a entryway for a header there, and that's it. So it's a great location. We've had a tremendous amount of interest. So if somebody would like to entertain that motion. Gene, do I have a second? Frank? Any further discussion? Yep.
Yeah, just curious. So this would become a county facility?
Yeah,
Town.
well, it's the Warren County Bikeway. And I've talked to members of the common council as well as other members that are involved with the city. The city would like to develop a connection from the new Coleswood, the proposed Coleswood Trail, the new one, which is going to be multimodal, including bicycles, and have that connection to the Warren County Bikeway. So this could act like a hub. In other words, you park here, you could go down Bay Road and visit the city. You could go either direction on the Warren County Bikeway, or you could go to Cranville Park and use that bikeway, which in turn will be hopefully connected to the
So you-
Halfway Brook Bikeway, the Feeder Canal Bikeway, and
Right,
so
so-
forth.
You go from here over Fort Amherst or something, and then connect to the Coles Woods.
That's what Mayor Hall was kind of explaining. It could work that way.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, oh, when you have a moment, I have a comment.
I got one in front of you. It's Rachel, right?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, hang on, Rachel. Go ahead, Ron.
No, I don't see the harm in seeing what financial support might be out there, but you do this, I think it's a logical next step.
Rachel? Rachel?
Yes, I'm sorry. I apologize. My video is off. I do have concerns about moving forward with this at this juncture. In the past, we require our departments to apply for grant funding, but we look at a grant application first. I don't see what grant is in front of us. On top of it, I have had a chance to talk to members of the Queensberry Town Board, and they're opposed to this idea as it relates to the town picking up the bill. They'd like to see a lot more info about the county picking up the legacy cost. But there are extended costs to this. I mean, if it is something you get grant funding for, we still are going to be taking on the county legal liability. We'll be taking on the maintenance of the area. I mean, if you're putting bathrooms up, who's cleaning them? The bottom line, when we're done with this, we are looking at cost to the county taxpayers. And there is another parking lot. There are other places. I just don't see the need to be doing this. I've been opposed to this idea for a while now, and I still am not seeing something. Not that, I know Supervisor Stroud mentioned that he spoke to some people about it. I haven't talked to him about it. I haven't been asked about it, but I do represent Queensberry, and I would ask before we start approving people to move forward for grant funding, what grants are we applying for? What's it really going to cost? What's the third party match, the in-kind expense? I think there's a lot more to this, and I'd like to see the information before we move forward with this type of approval. And I assume it would go to the full board for approval in the way it would other grant applications. But that's my 2 cents being a Queensberry representative, recognizing I'm not the town supervisor, but I have heard quite a bit as this hits the papers from our constituents. So I just be mindful of that long-term cost to the county taxpayer. Thank you.
Supervisor Seaver, thank you very much. Appreciate your input. Kevin, I was going to ask you if you could look this plan over and give us some idea what it might be for maintenance.
I can do that. Most of our facilities, except for the hatchery, we don't really have bathrooms. I mean, there is one in the parking lot, which is typically a porta potty that we rent every year, so we know the cost. But based on how short I am in staff, I think this would most likely add another person to my staff to be able to maintain this facility along with the rest of the bike path. 2 now are on that bike path doing most of the work this time of year when they were doing the fish hatch, the stocking of fish, and it was a lot for them to contend with just 2 people.
You have people that clean bathrooms in Queensberry?
Well, this is a concept. The bathroom option could be delegated to an outhouse. I mean, I think we do have to provide our bike trail users with something,
Definitely.
but it doesn't have to be a formal bathroom. It could be an outhouse. I mean, these are the kind of things that I think we need to look at.
Okay.
Parking lot on Country Club Road has temporary, correct?
Yeah.
Anybody have anything else? Brad?
We've talked about this and I'd like to be able to see the opportunity of a grant and maybe a grant to help maintain this because it is in the exercise and movement and I'm sure there's money out there for that. But my main concern is that we still have a slab there and a foundation, and to put a parking lot or whatever, I'm just concerned in the report that we've got back is that area is safe as long as we don't disturb the ground. And once we're gonna have to put a parking lot, or whatever, you're gonna have to take out those uneven slabs and the foundation And I, you know, that's where I feel that the cost is gonna hit us, and that's my concern.
Anybody else? You ready for the question? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? It's carried. I agree with you, Brad. I'm not arguing with you. We should locate that slab and have somebody determine whether and how it might fit in with this plan, which I like very much. And then next step would be to see what it would be to have it removed. They're not easy. Anything else?
Just,
Let me know.
just referral pending items. The first one is very quick. Two parcel the town of Johnsburg has expressed interest in. Andrea talked to me this morning. I believe we're looking for a June 27th planning board meeting with the town to do a subdivision for those pieces of property. And then the last one on there was for me to work with Wendell Vino on the bringing Shrine Circus to not the fairgrounds, but across the street from the fairgrounds. He just submitted me a plan that shows one tent in one area and then parking in the area that we typically use for parking during the Warrensburg Bike Rally. Based on the fees that I think it's $25 a day at the fairgrounds during, typical events, we would normally probably do that same fee for this as well. It's just using the area across from the fairgrounds. And that's all I had.
Okay. Subdivision wetlands.
There's two parcels in the town of Johnsburg. One of them is associated with the track. It widens out, so we have to subdivide it so that the town can have it. And it's on the other side of the track next to the river that we don't use, but it's tied into a larger lot. So we would have to subdivide that off of that lot.
Okay, thank you.
Or
Privilege of the floor.
Ryan was saying.
I just would like to commend the supervisor and the town board for extending themselves to show what might be possible on this piece of property.
Could you do that sometime?
Showing that kind of
We had a
initiative,
monthly meeting last night.
painting that kind of picture
I don't
of
know.
what might be possible. I think that type of future vision, that type of
John Doe, I don't know if you know.
leadership is
John's the interim.
when and how we do it in the future. I think you're saying these are questions, of course, but I think the
If-
idea of having
Fully
an
funded.
idea of something that
Just doesn't.
would be an asset. is a start.
I agree.
So if you could
And the town and the town board for
Appreciate it. Good move. Don? Hello.
Hi, Chairman Dickinson. How are you?
Excellent.
Great. Nothing on Parks and Rec. There was a comment on the solid waste portion of it, though, from an MB Mylot who pointed out that Sherwin-Williams store in Queensbury is the one local store that will take back the unused paint. And the paint cans must have a label to be returnable, reference to the discussion earlier by Thomas. So we have done some social media outreach on this. It's been very popular. People are very excited about this. So that's what we got.
95 cents back. Yeah.
There you go. You
I'll
own it.
give you the 95 cents, Brad. How's that?
Yeah. Okay. Entertain a motion to adjourn. John? Dan? We're adjourned.